It is predicted that on August 15th, 2024, former President Jimmy Carter will die. I do realize that no skeptic will believe that predicting the date of Jimmy Carter's death will be anything more than luck or coincidence, given his age of 99 years old and him currently being in a hospice. That is why it is also being predicted that on August 21st, the date of Jimmy Carter's predicted funeral, is the predicted death of James Earl Jones. And Jimmy Carter's full name is James Earl Carter. James Earl Jones is the voice of Darth Vader and the voice of the Lion King. Jimmy Carter was born in 1924 and will die in 2024 because the 2424th word, 2424th word, in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word Jesus. Jimmy Carter, JC, hints at Jesus Christ. James Earl Jones, the voice of the Lion King, who also played King Jaffe Jaffer in the movie Coming to America, is king symbolism. JC, Jesus Christ, is the King of Kings. No rational person will be able to conclude that when Jimmy Carter will die on August 15th, and James Earl Jones will die on August 21st, as predicted, that it will be a coincidence or random luck. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14. On August 21st, 2024, she will be replaced by Michelle Obama. And then Barack Obama will replace Michelle, because Simon and Garfunkel's first studio album was named Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. But her flight is predicted to depart Los Angeles LAX Airport on August 20th. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on August 9th, and that his prophetic funeral, in which Trump will sit next to Obama, will be on August 21st. I am predicting that James Earl Jones, the voice of the Lion King and the voice of Darth Vader, will die on August 21st, which is the same day on which it is predicted that Carter's funeral will be on. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 19th. I am predicting that on September 3rd, a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun that will then send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on September 5th, 2024, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. This will also trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano, which is predicted to erupt on September 5th. The hit of the coronal mass ejection predicted for September 5th that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. September 5th will be the day of the resurrection rapture event. I am predicting that on September 6th, 2024, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. September 6th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. September 6th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is probable that on September 6th, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. September 6th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic, and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. September 6th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. It is predicted that after Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as his vice president, and this will be announced at the Democratic National Convention, and this will be announced on the last day of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago on August 22nd. And on this same day, the Democrat Party will select Michelle Obama as their nominee for the presidential election. I am predicting that Joe Biden will step down and Michelle Obama will become the 47th president on September 19th. I am predicting that President Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president on October 12th, 2024. I am predicting that Michelle Obama will step down and Barack Obama will become the 48th president on November 2nd, 2024. It is predicted that on August 27th, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. And this is going to happen sometime before October 12th, 2024. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on August 25th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on August 26th. I am predicting that on August 29th, President Trump will die from a heart attack. I am predicting that on October 9th, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit on Earth. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, will be on December 26th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. If you have already watched this essential introductory information in another video, you can skip ahead 1 hour and 52 minutes. The information in this video is showing how God was pointing to the date July 1st in regards to the predicted death of James Earl Carter, former President Jimmy Carter. The prediction being made in this video that James Earl Carter or Jimmy Carter would die on July 1st is 100% correct. The information in this video is valid. God was pointing overwhelmingly to July 1st, 2024 with Jimmy Carter connections. Not only is the information in these videos that predicted July 1st valid, it is extremely important and must be watched. through the connections God used to point to July 1st, God told important stories and revealed essential knowledge. These videos must be watched. July 1st ended up being a step in the trail of signs that is 10 days before Carter's predicted funeral at the National Cathedral on July 11th, 2024. All right, this email here that I'm reading was originally composed the day after July 1st, and God was also pointing to July 6th, and therefore the signs that revealed adding 10 days to July 1st was believed that it was because that would be the day of the funeral, and that July 6th would be the date of Jimmy Carter's death. It turns out that we received amazing prophetic signs on July 6th as well that confirmed all of the analysis for Jimmy Carter, and this will be explained in another video, so make sure you watch all of the Jimmy Carter videos. There will be, for example, a video dedicated to the prophetic signs that God is using to point to the extremely important prophetic sign that will be the funeral. In other words, the biggest part of the signs, the theme that God is using for Jimmy Carter is involving the funeral, and I'll explain why. It has to do with the lineup of the former presidents sitting in the pew at the funeral, okay? And anyway, it is now believed that, well, the signs confirm it as well, including this 10 days. This 10 days that was for adding to July 1st was to get to the date of Jimmy Carter's death, not his funeral, okay? So this is correct, this 10 days, and I, again, will explain how we get this 10 days from the signs that occurred on July 1st. In just a minute, I'll explain that. Now, the rest of this paragraph here, I simply speak about how this movie, which was being pointed to on July 1st, this movie named How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, believe it or not, you'll see this is a movie God pointed to, and believe it or not, if you are new to this, even this concept of God using pop culture, well, get used to it, because this is how it works. God is highly involved in the world. That's the thing that surprises people. Even Christians will be shocked to learn how involved God has been throughout the years in history. All right, and that's proven with these prophetic signs, including, and again, this movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's a movie about do's and don'ts, which is a hint at the 10 commandments. All right, this will be explained. Well, anyway, again, so we received the sign, this movie, it hinted at adding 10 days. We get July 11th. There's far more confirmation than only that. All right, and that's the rest of this paragraph, and I'll just continue on here. All right, so what you just heard was recorded prior to July 11th. July 11th also ended up being another amazing step in the trail of signs leading to the death of Jimmy Carter. In other words, the signs that occurred on July 11th related to all of the analysis for Jimmy Carter. They were, in other words, signs related to the coming death of Jimmy Carter. The sign we received on this day, one of them was the death of Shelley Duvall, who is most remembered for her portrayal of Wendy in the movie The Shining, with her co-star Jack Nicholson, which is amazing because on July 1st, 10 days earlier, was the death of Robert Towne, and Robert Towne famously won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay for the movie Chinatown, starring Jack Nicholson, which, as I'm about to explain, is how we get to the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. In other words, this wasn't expected in advance, but the 10-day interval that I just said God was pointing to between July 1st and July 11th both end up being signs involving movies starring Jack Nicholson. Well, the reason for Jack Nicholson in itself is that God is using men named Nick to point to the Nicolaitan doctrine that in the book of Revelation, Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. And also in Revelation chapter 2, the same chapter, God or Jesus speaks of a 10 days period of testing for the saints in context of Nicolaitan doctrine. And that is because the vast majority of American Christians are Nicolaitans. And Jesus is coming to make war on this. Please make no mistake. I know far better than you the reason for the purpose of this prediction that is from God for the death of Jimmy Carter. I know what is going on. And the purpose of the prediction is to prove what I am saying, which is that if you are listening to this and you are a Christian, you most likely have the Nicolaitan doctrine. Now, to explain it would require at minimum another 10-15 minutes. So I'm not going to do it because I've explained it so many other times in other videos, and maybe even I do it later in this video. But you need to watch the 23 church signs video, okay? Nicolaitan means ruling over the laity. Jesus forbid pastors. Pastors are the problem, as are priests, bishops, and popes, etc. The warning that Jesus gave, the first one of many people claiming to be anointed, leading many people astray, are pastors. All right, but that's all I'm going to say. Also read the links in the description box below this video. Now, the sign involving Shelley Duvall, who died at the age of 75 on the day of the 75th anniversary of the NATO summit, hinted at adding 7 + 5 days to get to July 23rd, which is 7/23. And one of the most referenced things in cinema is from the movie The Shining, Room 237. Room 237 hints at 7/23. Outside the US, the date 7/23 is written as 23/7, which hints at room 23/7. And also, 2 + 3 = 5, and then 7 gives us a 7 and a 5, just like the death of Shelley Duvall at the age of 75. So room 237 also hints at 2 + 3 = 5 + 7 = 12, and it is 12 days after July 11th that we get July 23rd, the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die, and that's also why Shelley Duvall died at the age of 75 on the 75th anniversary of the NATO summit, which also hints at adding 7 + 5 to get July 23rd. Now, trust me, I am only scratching the surface here. I have made an amazing video. It is so profound, you have no idea. I can't exaggerate that. I can't express that enough, okay? And it is titled The Shining Video. I've titled this movie, or this video, that's explaining in far more detail than I just have, the signs that occurred on July 11th. And I've titled the video The Shining. It is an absolute must-watch. Of course, the wise person will recognize when the prediction comes to pass that every minute of every video should be watched, including every minute of every Jimmy Carter video. But make sure you watch the Shining video on this channel. And by the way, the reason why every minute of every video should be watched is because it is through these trails of signs and these stories that God is telling through the connections of his prophetic signs that God is revealing very extremely important knowledge, information that everyone needs to know. All right, I am now recording this after July 23rd. Today is July 29th, and the prophetic signs that were expected in advance of July 23rd confirmed all of the analysis. Again, God was pointing to July 23rd in regards to the coming prophetic death of James Earl Carter, Jimmy Carter. Both James Earl Jones and Jimmy Carter are, by the way, in God's signs, king symbolism, which is why the sign we received on July 23rd involved the King of Hollywood. This is a nickname for Clint Eastwood. He also goes by the King of Western movie genre, the King of Western, the King of Hollywood, Clint Eastwood. We had more movie signs. And so much was opened up. God showed so much amazing information and revealed it through the signs that occurred on July 23rd that another separate video has or will be made, and it'll be titled The Unforgiven Video. There'll be a thumbnail with a picture of Clint Eastwood on it, and it'll be titled Unforgiven. This is the movie in which Clint Eastwood directed and starred in and won many Academy Awards. And of course, the name Unforgiven is a prophetic hint at God's judgment for America and it being unforgiven, having not repented. Clint Eastwood is known for saying in a published interview that Barack Obama was the biggest hoax on America in American history. Obama is the biggest hoax on America in history. And he said this right after, just a week after, his famous speech he delivered at the Republican National Convention, in which he spontaneously pretended to be interviewing Barack Obama, sitting next to him. And he was mocked in the media for this, which is why he gave this interview to his hometown, small town in California, the local newspaper, which published this interview, in which Clint Eastwood said that the biggest hoax in American history was Barack Obama. And this became a major news story in itself, him calling Obama the biggest hoax in American history. This is why one of the things that point to Clint Eastwood on July 23rd was the senator from the 45th state quickly reposting a hoax that Jimmy Carter had died. And again, God was pointing to July 23rd ahead of time for the death of Jimmy Carter. And on this day was a major news story regarding this hoax regarding the death of Jimmy Carter. This senator from the 45th state reposted this, and the senator's name is Mike Lee, and he quickly reposted it without checking to see if it was real, which hints at Quick Mike, the name of the character at the center of the plot in the movie Unforgiven. One of the other news stories on this day that confirms all of this is the announcement, the report in the New York Post regarding the announcement from the Monterey County Health Department regarding how it is that Clint Eastwood's wife died. I will be explaining more. I'm just going through this very superficially here. This just briefly to explain how it is that July 23rd was confirmed, the analysis was confirmed, and how it reveals adding an additional 9 days to get to the date that it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on August 1st. This Senator Mike Lee, who hints at Quick Mike, also posted another hoax 6 + 6 + 6 days earlier, which hints at the Antichrist's number 666. He did the same thing. He quickly reposted a hoax regarding Joe Biden's regarding a medical emergency that Joe Biden supposedly had on his Air Force One. This is because all of this is connecting to the death of Kamala Harris in her Air Force plane. And this senator is the senator from the 45th state, and I will explain in the Unforgiving video how the 4th out of 5 Dirty Harry movies about a detective from San Francisco, and Kamala Harris is from San Francisco, and as in Dirty Harry, the detective in the Dirty Harry movies in San Francisco. Well, anyway, the 45th state is the sign on this day, but also on this day, Elon Musk, in his interview, speaking of interviews with Clint Eastwood, told Jordan Peterson that he was not donating $45 million to the Trump campaign. And Trump is the 45th president. Jordan Peterson hints at Michael Jordan, who also wore jersey number 45 in addition to his jersey number 23, which is the jersey number that Barack Obama, the basketball president, wore in high school. Michael Jordan also wore jersey number 9 when he played for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team, in which the team outscored their opponents by an average of 44 points, which hints at the 44th president, skipping the 45th presidency. And the number 45 is the 9th triangular number. In the Unforgiven video, I will explain how the news of Clint Eastwood's wife and his death points to the death of his former girlfriend and wife, Sandra Locke, who starred with him, Clint Eastwood, in the only Clint Eastwood-directed Dirty Harry movie, the fourth of the 5 Dirty Harry movies, which also hints at the number 45. And again, 45 is the 9th triangular number. And this is why it is 9 days from these signs on July 23rd to the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on August 1st. The fourth of the 5 Dirty Harry movies made $150,000. This is one reason for it being revealed that 15 days after July 23rd and these Clint Eastwood-related prophetic signs will be the day that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on August 7th. The reason why this all points to Sandra Locke, the former girlfriend and wife of Clint Eastwood, is that throughout her entire career and for her entire public life after her public, is that throughout her entire career and also her public life after her career, she maintained a big hoax regarding her birth date. In her first role, she shaved off 6 years to get her role, which got her nominated for an Academy Award. 6 years is 2 times 3 years, which hints at 23. And this hints at Barack Obama, the basketball president, who wore jersey number 23. And it is what Clint Eastwood is alluding to when he called Obama the biggest hoax. He's alluding to the hoax of Obama having been born, his birth location in the U.S., which is why the hoax of Clint Eastwood's girlfriend is relevant regarding her hoax about her birth date. Her hoax of 2 times 3 years, which hints at 23, pairs with the number 9, and this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required, and this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 23. 23 is the 9th prime number. Barack Obama, the basketball president, wore 23 and became president in 2009. In other words, the hoax of Clint Eastwood's former girlfriend of 2 times 3 years confirms the addition of the 9 days from these signs related to Clint Eastwood on July 23rd to give us the date that Jimmy Carter will die on August 1st. Now again, I'm only scratching the surface here. This video that I'm speaking of, the video that will be titled The Unforgiven Prophecy, is so overwhelmingly astounding, it must be watched. And the reason is because through this story that God is telling, there is extremely important knowledge that everyone needs to know. All right, I am now recording this on August 3rd. The signs on August 1st confirmed all of the analysis. The story is amazing. God provided more prophetic signs that revealed an entirely different story, as each step along the way does. And the story that God told through the signs that occurred on August 1st brought in the story of President Gerald Ford, who Jimmy Carter beat in the 76 election, 1976. Gerald Ford was the football president. And one of the signs we received on August 1st that confirmed all of the analysis was a football game, the first preseason football game of the season, which, and I'll explain this in another video. It'll be a truly amazing video. Make sure you watch it. I don't know what the title of it will be yet, but it'll explain what I'm about to just briefly, the point here is to just tell you that the signs confirmed all of the analysis and revealed adding 4 more days. One of the signs was a football game that pointed to Gerald Ford, the football president, who Jimmy Carter beat. But one way in which God did this was through the football games one football game in particular in which Gerald Ford participated in, which was the Chicago Charities College All-Star football game, which was an annual football game played between the winner of the Super Bowl and an all-star team made up of college players. That ended in 76, the year that Gerald Ford was beaten by Jimmy Carter in the election. That was the last year of this annual tradition. And Gerald Ford played in one of these games. That game was against Chicago. It's also titled the Chicago Charities football game because it was played annually in Chicago, but it wasn't always involving the Chicago Bears. But anyway, the Antichrist is the 44th president who is from Chicago. One clue for adding 4 days. Also, the football game score, the one that occurred on August 1st, 2024, had a point difference of 4 points. The score was, which confirmed adding 4 days to get August 5th, the date it is now predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. The score was 21-17, and 21 hints at 3. The 17 hints at 8, which together hint at 38. Gerald Ford was the 38th president. Okay, also, the sports media story of this game regarding this first football game of the season was about how there is a new rule for kickoffs, which is symbolic or hinting at the kickoff, if you will, of the end times and the destruction of America. And that is what Jimmy Carter symbolizes, which is explained in these videos. I have, importantly, let me see. Yes, extremely importantly, the Jimmy Carter funeral video. All of the videos that are making the prediction for Jimmy Carter's death should be watched, and the wise person will recognize this when the prediction comes to pass. But the funeral video is, unlike the other videos, it's the only one that's really talking about the prophetic signs pointing or regarding the funeral, which will be a massive prophetic sign. Anyway, Jimmy Carter is symbolic of Methuselah, and the name Methuselah means when he dies, destruction. Methuselah died in the Bible at the time of the flood, when it began. Methuselah was Noah's grandfather. Okay, so anyway, that's what is hinted at with the kickoff, but it's also hinting at the kickoff event of the demons pretending to be aliens, and Jimmy Carter is the UFO president. That's explained in other videos. Okay, so the thing about the new rule for the kickoffs in the NFL, And the reason why they made the rule, changed the rule, is because kickoffs were the most dangerous play in the game when the players rush down the entire field aiming to tackle the person that catches the ball. And the NFL has a controversy over how it is an unhealthy sport and people suffer brain damage, particularly when they are hit hard, and that's what happens on kickoffs. So this was for safety reasons, and that's also prophetic because we are also looking at the event prior to the beginning kickoff event of the alien deception, of the rescue and rapture of God's faithful, which is symbolized with this safety aspect of this story. Now, the new rule has it that the team's players are lined up on the 40-yard line when the kickoff is kicked. So before the new rule, the players were lined up somewhere on their side of the field, but now they are lined up on the 40-yard line of the opposing team. Well, anyway, there's lots to this. I'm not going to get into any more details because I want to save it for another video, and believe me, there's so much more than just this anyway. More than just even the kickoff rule. I'm talking far more. You have no idea. It's going to be an amazing video, as all of the Carter videos are. Well, anyway, the new rule about the 40-yard line not only hints at the 40th Vice President Gerald Ford, who was the only president to never have been elected either vice president or president, which makes him being the 40th vice president that much more relevant, because it hints at the 44th president, Barack Obama, who will likewise become the president again through being appointed instead of elected, thus overcoming the 22nd Amendment's restriction on someone being elected to the office more than twice. He will be appointed just like Gerald Ford, the only president to never have been elected. He was appointed instead. He was appointed the 40th vice president. Okay, and so that's the 40-yard line we are talking about, and as I'm saying, and we'll explain in the other video, this is all pointing to Gerald Ford. And anyway, the 40-yard line new rule is further confirmation of adding 4 days, in addition to the 4-point difference in the score of the game. Now, another sign we received, the big news story of the day, was the hostage exchange. The media would call it the prisoner exchange, but you could also look at it quite accurately as being a hostage exchange. Jimmy Carter was known for the Iranian hostage crisis. That was one of the biggest things about his presidency. The Iranian hostage crisis, which, by the way, is an extremely prophetic sign in God's signs, and one will know this if they've watched the videos on this channel. I've talked about this in many occasions, including other Carter videos, and how it plays into God's big picture in so many different ways. But this Iranian hostage crisis is also known as the 444-day hostage crisis, because it lasted for 444 days. Furthermore, it began on the date 11/4, November 4th, which hints at 11 times 4 equals 44. Barack Obama, the Antichrist president, the 44th president, was elected on the date 11/4. Incidentally, Barack Obama, the 44th president, who was elected on the date 11/4, which hints at 11 times 4 equals 44, was elected exactly 29 years after the beginning of the 444-day hostage crisis on the date 11/4. The reason for 29 years is because if God were to symbolize 9/11 and the judgment warning through the events on 9/11 and 2001 for America, using only two numbers, it would be 29 or 92, as the 2 hints at 2 ones. And so anyway, this prophetic sign involving the hostage crisis, which was an exchange of 24 hostages total, hints at the 444-day hostage crisis, which is further confirmation of adding 4 days. 444-day hostage crisis hints at 4 days to the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on August 5th, 4 days after August 1st. The last thing to mention here before just moving on here is that it was 24 hostages, and Jimmy Carter was born in the year 24 and is predicted to die in the year 2024, born in 1924. And that is because Jesus Christ was, the name Jesus in the Greek concordance is G2424. Which incidentally is why Jesus Christ will return in the year 2024. It hints at 2 times 24, in other words, 2424. Also, JC hints at Jimmy Carter. Jesus Christ, the initials are hinted at with Jimmy Carter. The initials for Jimmy Carter, I should say, JC, hint at Jesus Christ. And so that's why 24 hostages. And also 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8, and G2424 in Strong's Greek Concordance, the word in Greek for Jesus, is equal to, in Greek gematria, 888. Furthermore, it was 2 nations that did the exchange. That hints at 2024 and also 2424. Which is what the death of Jimmy Carter hints at, because he was born in 24 and will die in 24. And so there you have just a brief explanation. Make sure you watch the full video. It'll explain so much more. There's so much to this story. It is so amazing. But here you have why it is that, or how it is that the analysis for August 1st was 100% correct and revealed adding 4 days to get the date it is now predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on August 5th. And once again, the reason for the need to watch the other video is that God is telling these stories through these big pictures, through the trail of signs. And there is important, extremely important knowledge and information that needs to be known. This is why the other video needs to be watched. It's not enough to just simply know about the prediction. If God wanted to, he could simply tap on someone's shoulder and say, hey, tell the world that this is going to happen on such and such date. But what would that be good for? It would be good for very little. There would be very little learned from it. The knowledge and learning comes from the big picture of signs that is only being explained on this channel. And it is through these trails of signs that involve these steps in the trail of signs that God is able to tell these stories. And so that's why the other video needs to be watched. One more basic thing I should add here to make it all relevant is that Gerald Ford had his college uniform number retired. That's why he is the football president. He was very good at football, and his university retired his uniform number, but of course that was partly because he became the president. But anyway, his jersey number is 48, and that is because all of this is pointing to the predicted 48th president, Barack Obama, who, like Gerald Ford, will be the unelected president. And also, by the way, Barack Obama is also known for his jersey number because he is the basketball president. So that's another reason why the football president is relevant. Also, Barack Obama was the first affirmative action black president who was born in 1961. And Gerald Ford, part of the story of his college football days is the time in which his Wolverines from Michigan were told by Georgia Tech, the team from the fourth state, the state that Jimmy Carter is known for being from, told the Michigan team that they wouldn't play the Michigan team, if their black player would play in the game. And this black player was Gerald Ford's best friend on the team and the guy that he would room with when they went on road trips. This black player of the Michigan Wolverines was number 61, which hints at Barack Obama, who was born in 61. 61 is the 18th prime number, and 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, which hints at the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, 666. All right, I apologize. I took a little longer than I should have to explain some of the things regarding August 1st and how the prophetic signs on that date confirmed the analysis. For one thing, what I just explained, there's so much more to it, and it's explained in the video that I made that will be explaining all of this. So anyway, August 5th also turned out to be a step in the trail of signs, and it was recognized that it would be before August 5th. I think it was August 3rd that it was recognized that it would only be a step. Maybe it was August 4th, but regardless, the date didn't come and go before it was recognized that it would only be a step. The reason why the clue came in and to look at a further date down the road was apparent was because it was known that on August 5th, this Hurricane Debbie, which wasn't a hurricane at the time of this discovery, it was thought that it could become a hurricane. But anyway, Hurricane Debbie hints at Judges chapter 4 in the Bible regarding Deborah and Barak, the leaders of Israel. And the story about Hurricane Debbie, it was known that it would first hit Florida and then Georgia, the fourth state, which confirmed adding the 4 days. Not only that though, it hit Florida first, and Florida is the 27th state, and 27 is 3 times 9, which hints at 39 and the 39th president, who is from the fourth state. Not only that, now it is August 7th, as I'm recording this, and it's now reported that 4 people died in Florida due to this storm. That was known to be the sign to confirm the adding of 4 days from August 1st. And not only that, that same story talks about how 4 times 400 flights were canceled, which is more confirmation for the 4. And that all said makes all of this confirmation for adding 4 more days to August 5th. To get the date, it is now predicted that Jimmy Carter, who is from the fourth state, will die on August 9th. This is all flood symbolism, a hurricane, it's flooding, it's water, and August 9th will be the 50th anniversary of the end of the Watergate scandal, which was the beginning of Gerald Ford's presidency. The 40th president becoming the president. Okay, so that's why we had 4 days to August 5th when the storm, by the way, it was also the 4th named storm of the season. So the 4th named storm of the season, Debbie hinted at Judges chapter 4, and it hit the fourth state, killed 4 people, and canceled 4 times 400 flights 4 days after the 40-yard line rule and for kickoffs and the 4-point differential in the game, and on and on. But anyway, you get the idea. We had 4 more days to August 5th. There's much, much more to August 5th, which will also be explained in the same video that I'm going to explain August 1st. So I shouldn't really say this, but if you only watch one Carter video, I recommend watching this particular Carter video that I've titled the Trump assassination prophecy, because that's part of it, but that shouldn't be said because it really isn't a better video or a more informative video than the other videos. They're all profound. But make sure you watch, anyway, the Trump assassination prophecy video that is predicting that Jimmy Carter will die on August 9th. Yeah, I'm going to emphasize this one more time. Make sure that you watch all of the Trump assassination prophecy video predicting Jimmy Carter's death on August 9th. Not only will there be much more information regarding what happened on August 1st and 5th, but it is a beautiful summary of so many things regarding Jimmy Carter. There's so much to it. Trust me, it's far more than what I've just alluded to with what I've talked about so far regarding August 1st and 5th. It's an absolute must watch. All right, August 9th ended up being another step, a very important one, in the trail of signs that is leading, among other things, to the death of Jimmy Carter. August 9th, I should have known, would be a step. I should have known this because, as I was talking earlier a minute ago about August 1st, this was the day of the prisoner exchange with Russia. A total of 24 prisoners were exchanged between the two nations, which hinted at Jimmy Carter. And again, August 1st was known ahead of time to be a step in the trail of signs leading to the death of Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter was born in 1924, and he's predicted to die in 2024. And that hints at G2424 in Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word that means Jesus. And this is why Jimmy Carter has the initials JC, stands for Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, when he returns, will lead the captives free. This is a phrase, if you will, in the Bible regarding the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ. And so, Jimmy Carter, his presidency was, of course, known for the Iranian hostage crisis. The prisoner exchange was symbolism for hostages because that's essentially what these prisoners were. And that's part of the story, in fact, although the media doesn't use the word hostage. The media stories talk about how these, especially on the Russian side, these American prisoners were held for no legitimate reason, and so they were essentially hostages. And literally, okay, and so Jimmy Carter's presidency was known for the hostage crisis, which eventually led to their release, and on the last day of Jimmy Carter's presidency. Okay, so and the Iranian hostage crisis, which is synonymous with Carter's presidency, is also known as the 444-day hostage crisis. And that is because it lasted for 444 days. That was the length of time that the hostages were held hostage. And so one of the names of the Iranian hostage crisis is the 444-day hostage crisis. Well, this is clearly a prophetic sign that points to the 44th president. I've explained in the Jimmy Carter malaise video, the thumbnail for that particular video is the malaise speech video. I've explained how Jimmy Carter has many parallels with Barack Obama, the 44th president. Furthermore, the 444-day hostage crisis began on the date 11/4, November 4th, which hints at 11 times 4 equals 44. The 444-day hostage crisis that began on the date that hints at 44 was exactly 4 times 4 weeks after one of the other big things that the Carter presidency is known for, which is his malaise speech, which again I outline in the malaise video, and that speech is it is in proper light with the eyes to see a judgment warning from God. I recommend reading that speech and interpreting it as a warning from God regarding the state of America and the coming judgment and destruction. And so That's why it should have been recognized that August 9th would be a step in the trail of signs ahead of time, because it was 4 plus 4 days after all of what I explained that began on August 1st, which was also not only the day of the football game in which the score difference was 4 points and the kickoff rule was changed to the 40-yard line, it was the day of the hostage exchange, or rather the prisoner exchange with Russia, which hinted at Jimmy Carter, and it was a 444-day hostage crisis, which could have easily been added to August 1st ahead of time, as 4 plus 4 plus 4 days, because August 13th, furthermore, was already known to be a very significant date that God is pointing to. It is the 9th of Av in the Hebrew calendar, which incidentally, the 9th of August is a play on. And the 9th of Av is a prophetic date in the Hebrew calendar because of its association with destruction. And again, Jimmy Carter in God's signs is symbolism for Methuselah, whose name means when he dies, destruction. This is why we received on August 9th these signs that pointed to Yellowstone volcano, which is in the 44th state, and the caldera lies on the 44th latitudinal line. Much needs to be said about these signs that occurred on August 9th and their context regarding the coming predicted eruption of Yellowstone volcano on September 5th. But this was the day that Trump's airplane made an emergency landing in Montana as it was on its way to Bozeman, which sits on top of the Yellowstone volcano plume of lava underneath. Montana is the 41st state. On this day, Kamala Harris was in the 48th state, and that is because the 48th president will be Barack Obama, the 44th president, after he replaces Kamala Harris, who is predicted to die in a plane crash, which is why the emergency landing of Trump in his plane. Now, there are so many things to say here, but I will just say this. August 13th will also be a step in the trail of signs. Although it is amazing that it is 4 plus 4 plus 4 days after August 1st, it is yet still another step according to the analysis and what God is pointing to and communicating. And it is predicted that Jimmy Carter's death will be on August 15th. Okay, and that day will be 2 times 3 days after August 9th. August 9th was exactly 2 times 300 days after the sign involving the 48th state, which is why 2 times 300 days exactly after it was the day that Kamala Harris was in the 48th state, and we had a plane emergency sign because exactly 2 times 300 days earlier on December 18th, 2022, was the flight that departed the 48th state and made an emergency landing due to severe turbulence, or rather encountered severe turbulence just as it was coming in for a landing in Hawaii. And from what I recall, there were 11 people that needed to go to the hospital. I forget the details. But regardless, this was a clear sign that was communicating the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash due to turbulence. I've explained this date way back in 2022 and many times since. The reason for the exact first, also on December 18th, we had other signs that confirmed all of this. One of the other amazing signs we had on December 18th, 2022, which was expected in advance to be a major date, and it was, with the signs that confirmed all of the analysis, including how it is part of the trail of signs that is leading to the day that Barack Obama will become the 48th president, which is why the flight departed from the 48th state on that day. Well, anyway, one of the other signs we received on that day, and I won't get into all of the details on December 18th, 2022, that's another video, but the other sign, one of the signs was the release, the beginning first episode of the new Yellowstone television series, 1923. 1923 hints at 23, And that's why it is 2 times 300 days exactly to the day that Kamala Harris was in the 48th state on the day of a plane sign. Furthermore, she flew her plane to the 48th state. And that in turn is 2 times 3 days to the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. Now, one other reason why this is relevant is that, as I said, Jimmy Carter's name, or rather, sorry, in God's signs, Jimmy Carter is symbolism for Methuselah, whose name means when he dies, destruction. Methuselah died at the time of the flood, which was the time that Noah was 600 years old. As it says in the text, the beginning of the flood, at that time, Noah was 600 years old. Well, 2 times 300 days is 600 days. And so from the Yellowstone television series, oh, and by the way, the 1923 Yellowstone series stars Harrison Ford, and God is using Harrison Ford and his aviation mishaps to point to Kamala Harris and her aviation mishap. That's why the many prophetic Harrison Ford aviation mishap signs. Also, Harrison Ford is known for his many roles in his acting career of him being a pilot, and he's also known for his aviation hobby. He is, in fact, the spokesperson for the aviation community. He narrated the IMAX documentary Age of Airplanes, and on and on. So, in Harrison Ford, his 2 names, Harrison and Ford, are 2 names of presidents, and that's because the only president to serve non-consecutive terms skipped the 23rd presidency of Benjamin Harrison. And Gerald Ford, who Jimmy Carter beat in the election, was the only president to never have been elected vice president or president, which is how Barack Obama will become the president again through being appointed instead, and thus overcoming the 22nd Amendment. He will be unelected just like Gerald Ford. That's another reason for Harrison Ford. And so that's why Harrison Ford and his aviation mishaps connected to Kamala Harris. And again, the release of the new first episode of Yellowstone starring Harrison Ford was 2 times 300 days, and that was the day of the a flight that departed the 48th state, and it's 200 times 300 days exactly later to Kamala Harris, who flew into the 48th state. And then 2 times 3 days later to the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. Now, I've only scratched the surface of this information regarding what happened on August 9th. I just wanted to interject this here to give some continuity here in this attempt to explain how it is that it is known ahead of time that Jimmy Carter will die on August 15th. Incidentally, also, speaking of Kamala Harris, she is predicted to die on her flight on her way back from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., in order to attend the funeral of Jimmy Carter. That's the other reason for the association. And that day is predicted to be August 21st. She's predicted to die at 3 a.m. on August 21st because of Simon & Garfunkel's album, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m. Anyway, that's the day that it is predicted that Jimmy Carter's funeral will be in the Washington National Cathedral. And then Jimmy Carter's party, the Democrat Party, the following day, on the last day of the Democratic National Convention, is predicted to nominate, well, it is predicted that Joe Biden will make Michelle Obama his vice president, and it is predicted on that same day, the day after Kamala Harris's death, it is predicted that the Democrat Party will select as their nominee for the presidential election Michelle Obama. The question is, how did God point to this movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? One of the extremely profound ways in which God pointed to July 1st was that it was 1,290 days after the first Israeli took the thing on December 19th, 2020. This was also the day that the leader of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, took the thing. In the last verses of the prophetic book of Daniel, there is a mention of a period of 1,290 days following the setting up of a spiritual abomination on the Temple Mount. The Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount is a spiritual abomination, as is the Dome of the Rock. In fact, this is a typo. I really, in fact, mean to refer to the Dome of the Rock. The Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are the two mosques on top of the Temple Mount, but I'm specifically referring to the Dome of the Rock, the golden dome in the iconic images of the Temple Mount, the mosque with the golden dome. Okay, so the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount is a spiritual abomination, and it was completed in 688 AD. 688 AD plus 1,290 years was 1978, the year of the Camp David Accords that were brokered by President Jimmy Carter. The giving back of the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt with the Camp David Accords was an extreme transgression against God. In the prior verse in Daniel, there is a mention of 1,260 days. 688 AD plus 1,260 years was 1948, the year that Israel was reborn after 19 centuries. In other words, the 1,260-day years connection to 1948 is a second witness that confirms the relevance of adding 1,290 years to 688 AD to get 1978, the big year prophetically for Jimmy Carter. And that is why this number 1,290 is relevant with Jimmy Carter and in context of a spiritual abomination, which is why after the first Israeli and the leader of Israel took the spiritual abomination, which is the thing, was July 1st. And this was one, again, of the ways that God was, extremely profound ways in which God pointed to July 1st in regards to Jimmy Carter. Here is the text that I was referring to in Daniel chapter 12, the last chapter of the very prophetic book of Daniel, in the last verses. Here's this 1,290 days I was mentioning. And again, from the prophecy in Ezekiel, where God told Ezekiel to do something for a number of days that it would symbolize a number of years, we know that this can be interpreted as a period of years. And anyway, we are also here in this passage, there is a mention of this abomination, all right? So there's a spiritual abomination happening in this passage in context of the 1,260 days. What I am referring to, of course, is not the primary fulfillment of this prophecy. This is just a symbolic secondary fulfillment that God is using in his big picture of science. It's very important. We are talking about the mark of the Antichrist, and then 1,290 days later, we get July 1st, but that's a parallel with the abomination, because this is talking about the Temple Mount. It's talking about the regular burnt offering, which is what the ancient Jews used to do on the Temple Mount. It's talking about the temple, the Jewish temple, and it's talking about an abomination. And today, the Dome of the Rock sits directly on top of where the former Jewish temple stood. The Jews would love, or the Orthodox religious Jews would love to rebuild the temple, and they can't because the Dome of the Rock is there, because it is an abomination. And that was completed in 688 AD, and when we add the 1,290 years, we get 1978, which was the year of the abomination orchestrated by Jimmy Carter, with the pressure to have Israel return land for peace, the biggest transgression against God. Here is the 1,260 days I mentioned. It's mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy. Sometimes it's mentioned as 1,260 days, and sometimes it's mentioned as time, times, and a half time. That's because the time is 1 year, and times is 2 years, and a half time is a half year. So that's a total of 3.5 years. And in biblical prophetic years, year is 12 months of 30 days each. And so 3.5 years is 1,260 days. And if we add this to the Dome of the Rock, just like we added the 1,290 days, we get 1948, the year that Israel was reborn. And you can't get 1948 in the Bible unless it is the inspired word of God. what I meant a minute ago about what Jimmy Carter did with the Camp David Accords, which is when Israel gave back the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. What I meant by it being the biggest transgression is that this is the biggest transgression that the world collectively will do in the end. The division of Israel and the making of Jerusalem an international city, led by a world body led by the Antichrist, Pope Francis and Barack Obama. There are two Antichrists. Now, upon further consideration, I need to be more precise about what I said earlier about this 1,290 days that I'm describing not being the primary fulfillment. What really needs to be said is that, contrary to what most people that are interested in Bible prophecy still believe, is that these numbers of days are actually literal, and they are to have a literal fulfillment. They are only symbolic, and they are used in multiple ways. And this is, again, one way. And I would actually say that this is the primary way, because of what is now known, which is that the 1,290 days before the Day of Atonement, the day of the Lord's return, was in 2021, and there was no symbolic beginning. There was a symbolic 1,260 days beginning on May 2nd, 2021, which is explained in other videos. But this is actually a primary fulfillment. And one thing to add to this is because the next verse speaks of this 1,335 days, and what it is referring to is the date, the event of the resurrection rapture. And that will be 1,335 days after the same starting point that we add the 1,290 days to, which again was December 19th, 2020, the date that the first Israeli and the Israeli leader took the spiritual abomination, the mark of the Antichrist. 1,335 days after that date is August 15th, and that will be the date of the resurrection rapture, the first of two raptures, the first fruits rapture. The second rapture will be on September 5th. And the prediction being made in this video will prove this, and this is the purpose of this prediction that is from God. Make no mistake, I know far better than you the reason for this prediction. It is to prove that the resurrection rapture event will be on August 15th, 1,335 days after December 19th, 2020. And anyway, this is how important July 1st is. God pointed to this, you'll see, as I will explain. And it is, July 1st was 1,290 days after the spiritual abomination in Israel. And also, this is how creative God is. If we think about it, this is one major reason why God established July 1st as a step in the trails of signs that are leading to the death of Jimmy Carter. Like I said, it was clear God was pointing to July 1st, and you'll see, I'll explain what happened on July 1st, and you will agree. But one reason being for doing that is in order to establish this, what I just mentioned, the extra 45 days. God needed to establish July 1st in order to add the 45 days, which will also be explained, by the way, in these videos. And that could only have come through establishing July 1st and this 1,290 days connection related to Jimmy Carter. In other words, God wanted to establish and prove that the resurrection rapture event will be on August 15th, 1,335 days after the abomination was taken in Israel, the first one. And that needed to be done with this context of the abomination and the 1,290 days getting us to July 1st. So there you have it. That's one reason for what I'm about to be explaining, which is what happened on July 1st. All right, before we continue with this explanation, this truly amazing and very essential, important, necessary explanation for what happened on July 1st, there's more to be said. That is that it is now known that August 15th, the end of the 1,335 days from the date that the thing was first taken in Israel, the spiritual abomination, the mark of the Antichrist, will not be the day of the rapture. That has been known for a while now. and it will instead be the date that it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. This is amazing. It will be the 45th anniversary of the release of the movie Apocalypse Now that cost $45 million to make. And what I'm going to do is read a brief paragraph here before continuing with this explanation for what happened on July 1st. I'm just going to explain a few more things here that are truly profound. But again, August 15th will be 45 days after July 1st. And it could be said that all of this trail of signs that is leading from July 1st that have gone through here, it could have all been overpassed with the connection of 1,335 days from the date in 2020 in which the spiritual abomination was first taken in Israel. We didn't necessarily need to go through the 1,260 days, and then we could have just gone even then from there to July 1st, and then 45 days to the 45th anniversary of the Apocalypse Now movie, etc., because of the 45 difference of days between the 1,290 days and the 1,335 days. But there's so much to this, and obviously that wasn't God's plan because of all of the amazing, very extremely important information that came through God telling these stories that were able to be told through these steps in the trail of signs. In other words, there's so much information, as you may know by now, regarding Jimmy Carter that came through this last 45 days. And that wouldn't have been possible had it not been for these intermediary steps, although, as I'm now explaining, weren't even necessary, including even July 1st for that matter, because we could have simply added 1,335 days from December 19th, 2020 to get August 15th, and that would be the end of the story. But that would be tantamount equivalent to God tapping someone on the shoulder and saying, tell the world that such and such is going to happen on such and such date. But what good would that be? That would be essentially worthless. It is through his big picture of signs that develops these trails of signs and steps along the way that God is able to tell these stories and thereby communicate extremely important knowledge that everyone needs to know. Which is why the wise person will recognize when the prediction comes to pass that they need to watch every minute of every Jimmy Carter video and every video on this channel furthermore. All right, this is briefly what I wanted to read before we continue with the explanation for what happened on July 1st. Carter is symbolism for Methuselah, whose name means when he dies, destruction. The name Jimmy Carter is equal to 135 in simple English gematria. God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. 100, and by the way, simple English gematria is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. 135 is 45 plus 45 plus 45. And God repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. That's very important, in other words, regarding Jimmy Carter. What does number 45 mean? Well, what I'm saying a minute ago, his death will be at the end of the 1,335, which is symbolized by 45 because of the number of days in between the 1,290 days and the 1,335 days. But there's more to the symbolism for the number 45. It is a very special number. And the death of Jimmy Carter will be a very special prophetic sign. The reciprocal of 45 is 0.022. This is a big thing personally for how this came to be realized that this is the case and that this is very important. Let me just put it that way. Okay? It took a lot for this to happen, for this realization that this is what 45 hints at. I would say the biggest reason for the importance of the number 45 is that the reciprocal of 45 is 0.022. What that means is 1 divided by 45. It means it's the opposite. It means it's like hidden, if you will. In other words, this number is hidden within the number 45 because when we turn it upside down, we get this number, 0.022, which hints at 220. G220 in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word for rooster, and rooster symbolizes Peter. Throughout church history, anyway, Jesus gave Peter his name, which means rock. And in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. In other words, this 220 number is symbolism for Jesus. Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem as the King of the Jews was on the Hebrew calendar date 110, the 10th day of the month of Nisan, the first month. So the date 110 was the date of Jesus' triumphal entry. 220 hints at 2 times the date 110, because the date 110 hints at 110, and 2 times 110 is 220. And so therefore, the number 220, which hints at 2 times the triumphal entry, hints at the second coming and the second triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, at his second coming. This is why Jimmy Carter's name gives us 45 plus 45 plus 45, and why he is symbolic of Methuselah, whose name means when he dies, destruction. Because the wrath of God and destruction precedes the second coming. This is why Carter is predicted to die on the 45th anniversary of the release of the movie Apocalypse Now, a movie that cost $45 million to make, $9 million of which was spent on promotion, and 45 is the 9th triangular number. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. Carter's death will coincide with the timing of the prophetic 9th of Av date in the Hebrew calendar that is associated with destruction. Carter's death, and by the way, destruction on Temple Mount, and the abomination, like I just explained a minute ago, the abomination that's set up, the primary reference of that is regarding the Temple Mount. But in the New Testament, God's temple is the body of a follower of Christ, which is why the mark of the Antichrist that was put inside people's temples was a spiritual abomination. Carter's death will also be on the 79th anniversary of Victory Day at the end of World War II in 1945. The number 79 is the 22nd prime number, 22. World War II ended in 45, which hints at 0.022, and hints at the second coming, as in the second coming. 2, as in World War II, as in 79 years, 22nd prime number. To confirm his signs and connections, God pairs 9, 23, and 44 as the 44th president and basketball president who wore jersey number 23 became the president in 2009. Carter's predicted death on August 15th will be 2 times 3 days after the related prophetic signs on the 9th of August, which hints at the 9th of Av, involving Yellowstone volcano in the 44th state. The 9th of Av was the 79th. The 9th of August was the 79th, as in 22nd prime number, anniversary of the second of 2 bombs dropped in Nagasaki in 45, the 9th triangular number. I'll repeat that. So there were 2 bombs, and the second of the 2 bombs was dropped exactly the 22nd prime number of years before August 9th, 2024. And again, that's another 45 because Nagasaki was bombed in 45. Nagasaki is the location of the Hidden Christians UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which God will hide, as in rapture, his faithful Christians from the Antichrist in tribulation on the date 9/5, September 5th in 2024, and 9 times 5 equals 45, which hints at the second coming, which is why the rapture, the resurrection rapture event in the second coming will be on the date that hints at the number 45. September 5th, 9/5, because 9 times 5 equals 45. In the final prophecy in the book of Daniel that regards the quote-unquote time of the end. Sorry, that's typed, written incorrectly. The final prophecy in the book of Daniel regards the time of the end. This prophecy describes a period of 1,290 days from the time that an abomination is set up on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, as well as a period of 1,335 days from this time that an abomination is set up on the Temple Mount. The difference between 1,290 days and 1,335 days is 45 days. Jimmy Carter pressured Israel to give land to Egypt in exchange for so-called peace. This was transgression against God, as clearly outlined in the Bible. In Bible prophecy, 1 day can be symbolic of 1 year. The Camp David Accords were brokered by Carter in 1978, 1,290 years after the year 688, when construction began on the Dome of the Rock, which is an abomination, on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, directly on top of the location where the ancient Jewish temple stood. This period of 1,290 days from the setting up of the mentioned abomination in the book of Daniel hints at G129. Okay, so again, in the prophecy, a period of 1,290 is in context of the setting up of the abomination, which is why from the setting up of the abomination, the Dome of the Rock, we get Jimmy Carter and him pressuring to give land back to Egypt. Okay, so, but this 1,290 number in this setting up of the abomination prophecy hints at G129 in Strong's Greek Concordance, which is the word for blood. The mark of the Antichrist is a spiritual abomination, and it is the CVD thing that affects people's blood. In the New Testament, it is said that God's temple is the physical body of a follower of Christ. The first injection administered into a human body in Israel was on December 19th, 2020. On this day, the Prime Minister of Israel publicly took the thing. The word abomination hints at Obama nation. 1,290 days after December 19th, 2020. Oh, and you know what? If you have the eyes to see it, that date hints at 1,290 and 129. Look at it. That's amazing. And you know what? You really do need the eyes to see that, because I know so fully well and so confident am I that it is relevant to add this number to this date. I'm now able to see it. That date, the 12 and followed by the 9, cancel out the 1 because it's repetitive, and cancel out the 2 and the 0 because it's repetitive. Well, zeros cancel out anyway because they're zeros. You've got 129. Anyway, so 1,290 days after December 19th, 2020 was July 1st, 2024, which I'm about to continue explaining. The day that Obama's Supreme Court pick, Justice Sotomayor, in response to the Supreme Court's decision regarding immunity for the 45th president, said that America now has a king. Likewise, on July 1st, Biden delivered a speech in response to the decision and said that America was founded on the premise that it does not have a king, which is rich given that he is a dictator king because of everything that he is and the shoplifted referendum. God is using Jimmy Carter as a prophetic sign that points to the prophecy in Revelation chapter 17, verse 11, that regards a series of successive kings. This prophecy regards 5 kings and a 6th and 7th king that are followed by an 8th king. The number 1711 hints at Revelation 17:11 that regards the 5th through 8th kings prophecy. 1711 is the 58th triangular number, and 58 hints at this prophecy in Revelation 17:11 regarding the 5th through 8th kings. The reciprocal of the number 89 is 0.01123, and 1123 is the 188th prime number. And God uses this in his connections to point to H188, the word in the Hebrew concordance that means woe, exclamation mark. This word is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. July 1st in 2024 was also the day that Robert Town died at the age of 89, 1,711 days after Robert Evans died at the age of 89, which hints at woe, exclamation mark, as I just explained. The two men worked together on the famous movie Chinatown, which in turn hinted at the Manchurian Candidate, who is Barack Obama, Obama Nation. July 1st is 1,290 days after the first abomination that affects a person's blood was put into someone, into a human temple in Israel. July 1st, 2024, and the court's decision regarding the 45th president is 45 days before it is predicted that former President Jimmy Carter will die, the president who pressured Israel to give land to Egypt. The president who pressured Israel to give land to Egypt 1,290 years after the abomination was set up on the Temple Mount, which makes the day that it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die 1,335 days after the abomination thing was first administered into a human temple in Israel. Daniel 12, verses 11 through 12, quote, "And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away and the abomination makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335 days." Now, again, the 1,335 days completion on August 15th is no longer believed to be the date of the resurrection rapture, which is what, of course, is being referred to by blessed is he who waits and arrives at that date. But it will be at the end of the 45 days and also 1,335 days, which I have now explained symbolizes or is symbolism for 45 days and the other way around and vice versa. And that is because the resurrection rapture event will be on the date that hints at the number 45, September 5th. 9 times 5 equals 45. And in the Bible, 3 sets of 7 is symbolic of destruction. The Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 when they marched around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment, which is why it was 7 times 7 times 7 firefighters that died when the World Trade Center towers collapsed. And by the way, it was 2 110-story towers, which hinted at the second coming, as I explained, the number 220, 2 times 110 stories, which again is hinted at with the number 45. Also, the second plane had 7 plus 7 times 7 passengers, and in fact, the symbolic enacting of the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua by the Israelites before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho was in fact more accurately a 7 plus a 7 times 7. From the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die, and again, when he is symbolism for Methuselah, which means when he dies, destruction, it is 7 plus 7 plus 7 days to the resurrection rapture event, which is why we have the 1,335 days connection to the date it is predicted that he will die, which again hints at the resurrection rapture event because that's what the 1,335 days refers to in Bible prophecy. And then it is 7 plus 7 plus 7 days to the resurrection rapture on the date that symbolizes 1,335 because the number 45 symbolizes 1,335. All right, now I'm going to continue with the explanation for what happened on July 1st that was written shortly after July 1st. Because of this connection, it was expected that there would be a prophetic sign involving a spiritual abomination and the Antichrist, if Jimmy Carter were to not die on this date. So if Jimmy Carter if it isn't the end of the trail of signs leading to the death of Jimmy Carter, it means that it would be a step, and therefore we would expect a sign involving a spiritual abomination and the Antichrist on this July 1st date. God is demonstrating that Jimmy Carter is symbolic of the first of 7 kings in Bible prophecy. In Revelation chapter 17:11 in the Bible, there is a mention of a series of 7 kings followed by an 8th king. A secondary fulfillment, a secondary symbolic fulfillment of this prophecy, not the primary fulfillment of this prophecy, is Jimmy Carter, who was inaugurated in 77, as in 1977, began a succession of 7 presidents that leads to the identification of the Antichrist, who is the 6th and 8th presidents, and therefore the symbolic 6th and 8th kings in the prophecy. The name Barack Obama is equal to 68 in simple English gematria, which is A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, etc. And therefore, his name in a succession of presidents that begins with Carter, Barack Obama is the 6th president and is predicted to become the 8th president, which is why his name equals 68 in simple English gematria. Trump is the 7th president after Carter was inaugurated in 77, which is why Trump was elected by 77 electoral votes, and on Trump's inauguration day, in the year that ended in the number 7, he was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. 77 days after his inauguration, Trump launched 59 missiles into Syria. 59 is the 7th super prime number. The 17th prime number is 59, and 17 is the 7th prime number, making 59 the 7th super prime number. Ancient Rome was founded after a period of 7 kings that ended in 509 BC, which is why, incidentally, the reason for the 7 kings in this Bible prophecy is it is because the primary fulfillment of it identifies Rome. Okay, so in ancient Rome, it is widely known in ancient history, or rather, it is widely known that ancient history tells us that ancient Rome was founded after a period of 7 kings that ended in 509 BC. 509 hints at 59, the 7th super prime number. At Carter's funeral, the presidents will be lined up in chronological order, which will point to this prophecy in Revelation about a chronological order of 7 kings, followed by an 8th king. Trump, the 7th king, and Obama, the 8th king, are predicted to sit next to each other at Carter's funeral. In the prophecy, it is said that the eighth king was, is not, and will be again. Obama was the president, is not the president, and it is predicted he will become the president again on August 25th, 2024. The predicted funeral on July 11th will be exactly 509 days after Carter first went into a hospice, and this hints at the succession of kings in Rome that ended in 509 BC. George W. Bush will also be sitting in the row of presidents at Carter's funeral, and Bush will turn 78 years old. In other words, his 78th birthday will be the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die, on July 6th. His age of 78 will hint at the 7th and 8th kings in the prophecy. George W. Bush is the 5th king in this fulfillment of the prophecy, and it's only symbolic, and it's a secondary to the primary one, as I said, but George Bush was the 5th king after Carter in this fulfillment of the prophecy, and the prophecy speaks of the first 5 kings being similar and having left the scene before the 6th through 8th kings. As mentioned, on July 1st, it was expected that either Jimmy Carter would die or there would be prophetic signs that provided king and spiritual abomination symbolism. On July 1st, the Supreme Court ruled that the president is entitled to immunity from prosecution for official acts of his duties as president. President Biden is not the symbolic 8th king in this prophecy because he is a puppet of Obama's people in the permanent government ruling class of Democrats in Washington, otherwise known as the deep state. In response to the Supreme Court's decision, acting President Biden delivered a speech about how America was founded on the notion that it would not have kings, which is ironic and prophetic because, like everything the left claims these days, the opposite is true, and Biden, the puppet of Obama and his people, is America's first king dictator. Also, in the Supreme Court's dissenting opinion, Justice Sotomayor, Obama's first appointee, said that America now has a king. She used the word king for America's leader on the date it was expected there would be a symbolic Antichrist king sign. Prior to July 1st, we also expected a sign with spiritual abomination symbolism. On this date, famous Hollywood screenwriter Robert Towne died at the age of 89. Robert Towne died on July 1st, this date that we were expecting a spiritual abomination. And he died at the age of 89. Robert Towne died at 89, exactly 1,711 days after the death of famous Hollywood movie producer Robert Evans died at the age of 89. So they both died at the age of 89. 89 is the 24th prime number. These two men worked together in Hollywood, and their two deaths at the age of 89, which hints at the 24th prime number, hints at Jimmy Carter, who was born in 24, as in 1924, and will die in 24, as in 2024. Jimmy Carter's initials, JC, hint at Jesus Christ, and G2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance is the word Jesus. Robert Towne's death on 7/1, July 1st, 7/1, 1,711 days after the death of Robert Evans, hints at the prophecy in Revelation 17:11 about the 7 kings followed by an 8th king. All right, so the 1,711 days hints at Revelation 17:11, which is why Robert Towne died on the day the Supreme Court Justice said that America now has a king. This hints at the coming Antichrist king, who will be defeated by the King of Kings at his second coming in 2024. If the starting date is not included in the calculation, this period of 1,711 days in between the deaths of Robert Evans and Robert Towne is also 1,710 days, and 171 is the 18th triangular number, and 18 is equal to 6 plus 6 plus 6, and 666 is the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. In Bible prophecy, the period of the Antichrist's rule is symbolized by 7 years. Robert Evans is credited with making Paramount Studios a major success after ruling as its chief for 7 years, as in the Antichrist's period of 7 years. Robert Towne won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay for his movie Chinatown, which Robert Evans produced. The movie starred Jack Nicholson, and during its production, Nicholson learned from a reporter that his deceased sister and mother were in reality his mother and grandmother, which was an eerie coincidence, given that in the movie, which Nicholson was filming at the time of him learning this, Nicholson's character learns the shocking secret that Faye Dunaway's character is both the sister and the mother of another character as a result of incest with her father at the age of 15. The movie was directed by Roman Polanski, who is known for the sexual relationship he had with a 13-year-old girl. Polanski's pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, was murdered by Manson family members. Polanski directed the movie Rosemary's Baby, which Robert Evans also worked on. The horror movie Rosemary's Baby is about a pregnant woman who gives birth to the baby Antichrist. In the movie, the baby has the eyes of his father, Satan, and the baby is an abomination. Robert Evans died exactly 2,620 weeks after the release of Rosemary's Baby, and 262 is the 84th semi-prime number. The name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria, and Obama was born, the Antichrist was born, as in Rosemary's Baby's Antichrist birth, on the date 8/4. Therefore, the movie Rosemary's Baby connects to the death of Robert Evans, and his death connects to the death of Robert Towne on the date that it was expected that there would be a prophetic sign involving a spiritual abomination. Robert Evans's last movie that he produced was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, which is why it is predicted that Jimmy Carter's prophetic funeral, in which the presidents will be lined up in chronological order, will be 10 days after the death of Robert Towne, which was the same day that the Supreme Court Obama appointee said that America now has a king, as in the Antichrist king, Barack Obama. What is also amazing is that on July 1st, the date that we were expecting a sign involving Jimmy Carter and his death, was the day that the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library announced that for Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday celebration, the library is planning to have a film festival, a movie festival, and the festival will be running from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m., which hints at the movies that I just mentioned, including the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. In other words, the 100th birthday celebration with a film festival hints at the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. 100 hints at the number 10. What is also interesting too is that Jimmy Carter set up the Georgia State Film Office after the success of the movie Deliverance during the time that Jimmy Carter was the governor. Georgia went on to become a place where movies are made, and this started when Jimmy Carter was the governor of Georgia. Deliverance hints at the deliverance from the Antichrist of God's faithful through JC, which is why Jimmy Carter's initials, JC, hint at Jesus Christ. Robert Towne got his start in movies through working under Roger Corman. Roger Corman is said to be the Pope of pop cinema, the spiritual godfather of the new Hollywood, and the king of cult. Corman is also known for his Poe cycle of 8 movies. These 8 movies were inspired by 8 different writings of Edgar Poe. Roger Corman hints at how Pope Francis is the 7th king, and how a revived Roman Empire is the 8th king in the primary fulfillment of this prophecy in Revelation regarding the 5th through 8th kings. This is why Roger Corman died 58 days before it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on July 6th, 2024. In the secondary fulfillment of this prophecy, Obama is the 8th king, and 8 movies in the King of Cults Poe cycle also hints at 4+4 and the 44th president. Robert Towne also wrote the screenplay for the Tom Cruise movie Days of Thunder. The name Barak in Hebrew means lightning. In Luke 10:18 in the Bible, Jesus said that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning, Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven, as it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place. And O, in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, is the word from. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. Days of Thunder was released on June 27th, 1990, exactly 34 years and 1 month before what is predicted to be Seven Thunders Day on July 27th, 2024. July 27th, 2024 will be a symbolic beginning of the 7 thunders of judgment that are mentioned in the book of Revelation. In other words, 7/27 or July 27th, 2024 will be the beginning of the Days of Thunder. The 7 thunders will be supernatural phenomena such as demons pretending to be aliens and the demonic possession of the masses. 34 years and 1 month hints at 341, the 110th semi-prime number, and 110 is symbolic of the walls of security of Jericho that collapsed in God's judgment. Joshua, who led the Israelites before the walls collapsed, died at the age of 110, and this is why the twin towers that collapsed on 9/11 were 110 stories high. 34 years and 1 month is also 409 months, and 409 is the 40 plus 40th prime number, which hints at the 44th president, whose name means lightning. And again, this 409 months is a connection from the release of the movie Days of Thunder. To confirm his signs and connections, God pairs the numbers 23 and 44 together, as the 44th president is also the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. Robert Towne's Days of Thunder cost 2 times 30 million, which hints at 23, to make, and it was released 44 days before the release of Robert Towne's sequel to his Chinatown movie, The Two Jakes. More than a decade after the release of the movie Chinatown, Robert Towne and Robert Evans collaborated again on a sequel named The Two Jakes. It is said that The Two Jakes faced a troubled production and went through several years of development hell. The name The Two Jakes hints at the two Antichrists. The two Roberts that made the two Jakes further confirms this. A sequel movie is symbolic of the second presidency, a sequel for Barack Obama, the second of the two Antichrists in Bible prophecy. The Two Jakes was directed by Jack Nicholson. This hints at the Antichrist directing the persecution of the saints in order for God to purge them of their Nicolaitan doctrine that the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians hold and practice, and that Jesus said would come to make war on with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this Nicolaitan doctrine. Make sure that you watch the 23 Church Signs video on this channel and read the links that will be in the description box below this video. The reason for the coincidence in the names of Robert Towne winning the Academy Award for Best Screenplay for the movie Chinatown is that Robert Towne and Chinatown point to China. China is symbolic of the red dragon in Bible prophecy that is a metaphor for Satan and his representative, the Antichrist. There is another prophecy in Revelation in which the second of the two Antichrists, Barack Obama, is said to speak like a dragon. This is because Barack Obama and his allies on the political left constantly speak lies while accusing their opponents of lying and doing the very things that they are doing, which is textbook communist strategy that Barack Obama learned from his days studying radical, subversive, leftist political strategy. The truth is, Barack Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization, which bombed the Capitol building in Washington in 1983. The organization was disbanded in 1985, the year that Obama moved to Chicago to further pursue radical leftist politics. The purpose of this prediction in this video, that is from God, is to prove what I have just said. The reason why the name China is pointed to through Robert Towne and Chinatown is because it hints at the movie The Manchurian Candidate. In the 1962 movie The Manchurian Candidate, the protagonist's name is Marco, and the movie was directed by John Frankenheimer, who was said to be the last of the dictatorial style of directors. The name Frankenheimer hints at Frankenstein, and he also directed Island of Dr. Moreau, about genetic experiments that create half-human, half-animal creatures. The production of the movie Island of Dr. Moreau is said to have been the most cursed movie ever made, and interesting documentaries have been made about this. The name Marco and Frankenheimer from The Manchurian Candidate hints at the mark of the Antichrist that changes a person's chromosomes, making them an Obama nation, as in abomination. The mark of the Antichrist has inserted snake venom chromosomes into people's chromosomes, which is what is alluded to with the half-human, half-animals in Island of Dr. Moreau. This makes these people an abomination, as in Obama nation. The number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, and Frankenheimer's The Manchurian Candidate cost $2.2 million to make. John Frankenheimer died exactly 22 years before it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die on July 6, 2024. At Carter's funeral, Joe Biden will sit in the row of presidents, followed by Trump and Obama. Biden and his brain dementia is symbolic of the character in The Manchurian Candidate that is brainwashed by communist operatives within the US government and who isn't fully aware of what he is doing. Obama is symbolic of the communist Manchurian Candidate in the movie The Manchurian Candidate, who is waiting for the death of someone in order to gain the president's office and usher in an authoritarian regime in the US. This awaited death will be the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on July 22nd, 2024, which will be 4 times 4 days, which hints at the 44th president, after the predicted death of Jimmy Carter. The movie The Manchurian Candidate was released 446 days after the birth of Barack Obama. 446 hints at the 44th president and the 46th president. And the characters in the movie The Manchurian Candidate point to these presidential candidates. Hello. A few amazing prophetic signs occurred on June 27th, 2024, which I'll briefly explain in this video. And these include, I'll just explain it as we go, but it confirms that James Earl Jones, the voice of the Lion King and the voice of Darth Vader, will die 4 + 4 days after these signs. And it confirms what has been predicted for July 27th, 2024, the date that we could call Revelation chapter 9 day, or the 5th trumpet day of the 7 trumpets in the book of Revelation, the 5th trumpet judgment. We could call it Demons Pretending to be Aliens Day, Pope Francis Day, the beginning of the Antichrist system day, and on, given what God has been communicating about this date. Well, on June 27th, King James, that's his nickname, LeBron James, the famous basketball player, goes by the nickname King James, who has won 4 NBA championships, and who wears jersey number 23, which makes this a pairing of 23 and 44, because, as I will explain here, because he, in this sign, became the 4th professional athlete to play on a team with his son. All right? So that gives us 2 4s. That's what I was getting at, and that hints at the 44. Okay, and this is a typo. It should say 23. God pairs 23 and 44 together to confirm his signs, patterns, and connections. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And when we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44, because the 44th president is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. Speaking of basketball, we have a basketball sign. And king also hints at the Antichrist king, the basketball president, who wore jersey 23 just like LeBron James. And that is only the beginning of the parallels between LeBron James and Barack Obama. The fact that they both wore, number 23. And LeBron James is considered to be a GOAT. There is a controversy, the debate, as to whether LeBron James or Michael Jordan are the GOATs of basketball, greatest of all time. Coincidentally, both of them wear jersey number 23. And Michael Jordan is from Chicago, which points to Barack Obama. Well, anyway, so we have with LeBron James, the King James, having won 4 NBA championships, making this sign here in which he became the 4th professional athlete to play on a team with his son, a prophetic sign that hints at 44, which pairs with the 23 that confirms that it is a sign. 4 NBA championships and the 4th athlete to play with his son. And what I mean by athlete is because we are talking about major professional sports, and only 3 other times has a father played on the same team with his son. Okay, so LeBron James's son, Bronny James, on June 27th, was selected 55th overall in the NBA draft. Bronny James played 1 year of college basketball and averaged 5 points in 5 times 5 games. Okay, so he was selected 55th, and that was after his year of college basketball in which he averaged 5 points in 5 times 5 games. In the Bible, a 30-year period is symbolic of a king. This King James sign occurred 30 days before the 5th trumpet 5G day. All right, that's why he was selected 55th on this day. 30 days, because 30 is symbolic of a king in the Bible. And we're talking about King James's son. All right, that's the confirmation. And this sign involves King James because the sign is about how they will be playing together on the same team. It's not only about Bronny James. So we have, anyway, that confirming the 30 days. And this is why he was selected 55th and averaged 5 points in 5 times 5 games before declaring eligibility, before declaring he would be in the draft, that he would forego any more college basketball. Okay, so there you have it. And so that's confirmation for 5th trumpet 5G day. And what do I mean by 5G? God is communicating that 5G frequencies will activate the mark of the Antichrist, which is inside people who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing. And you know what I'm talking about. And this will induce the activation of the components that are in people now. It will induce demonic possession. That's where all of this is leading to. All right, King James, who has won 4 NBA championships, became the 4th athlete to play with his son 4 plus 4 days before the predicted death of James Earl Jones, who is King Symbolism. He was the voice of the Lion King. He played King Jaffe Jaffer in Coming to America. In fact, in Coming to America, which is a play on the 2 because it's the number 2, in other words, the sequel, he played a dead and dying king. He also read the audiobook James Earl Jones reads the King James Bible. And also he was the voice of Darth Vader, which is Antichrist King symbolism. And also he was born near the birthplace of the King of Rock and Roll in northern Mississippi. All right, now, so that confirms the 4+4 days, right? The 4 NBA championships and him becoming the 4th athlete to play with his son. Now, as I've explained in other videos, Jimmy Carter is also a symbol for a king. He was inaugurated in 1977, and in a secondary sub-level fulfillment of the prophecy in Revelation chapter 17 regarding the 7th and 8th kings, Jimmy Carter started this count of 7 kings, culminating in President Trump as the 7th king, but that's not the purpose of this prophecy. It is just a clever way in which God to use this prophecy in a second way. I hope that's understood. God is the master creative artist, and he can use all kinds of symbolism and ways in which he's not, okay, so you get the idea. It's just symbolism, okay? So Jimmy Carter started a count of 7 kings, having been inaugurated in 77, leading up to the 7th king in this particular symbolic way of Trump, who was inaugurated at the age of 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, 77 days before he launched 59 missiles into Syria, and 59 is the 7th super prime number, and on and on. And he won by 77 electoral votes, etc. So anyway, this sign here with King James having won 4 NBA championships and becoming the 4th athlete to play with his son, 4+4 days before the death of James Earl Jones, who is king symbolism. This is also 4 days before the predicted death of Jimmy Carter, who is also symbolic of a king, whose death is predicted to be 4 days before the death of James Earl Jones, who is some king symbolism also. And Jimmy Carter's full name is also incidentally James Earl Carter. And we are talking about LeBron James and Bronny James. So this Bronny James, LeBron James sign, in which LeBron James became the 4th player to play with his son, is 4 days before the predicted death of James Earl Carter. And by the way, the most famous line in cinematic history is when James Earl Jones said as Darth Vader, "I am your son," which hints at the Son of God, Lord Jesus Christ. All right. And by the way, the Antichrist king is the 44th president. That's the reason here for the 4+4 days before the death of James Earl Jones, who is king symbolism, 4+4 days after this King James sign, which I just mentioned earlier, is pointing to the Antichrist, the basketball president. King James plays for the Los Angeles, as in fallen angels, which is what the 5th trumpet is in the book of Revelation, when the key opens the bottomless pit for the fallen angels to come out of and cross over into the earthly realm. Okay, so King James plays for Los Angeles. Ken Griffey Sr. wore jersey number 30, which again is king symbolism, the number 30. When he and his son, Ken Griffey Jr., hit back-to-back home runs for Seattle, which the team plays in King County, by the way, in Los Angeles, which hints at fallen angels, on the date September 14th, 1990. Ken Griffey Jr. encouraged fans to exit the Kingdome, as in the Antichrist kingdom, after a 4.8, as in the 48th president, earthquake, because Barack Obama is predicted to become the 48th president. Earthquake hit King County, in the 42nd, as in the Antichrist, state, because the number 42 is associated with the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. This earthquake was exactly 5 times 5 years before the record-setting SpaceX Dragon crew splashed down on Earth, which hints at Revelation 12, fallen angels to Earth, that's described in Revelation 12. Which, the splashdown of the Dragon crew that broke the record for a number of days in space, at 84 days, they tied it at 84 days, which hints at Obama, which is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria, and Obama was born on the date 8/4. So the date of the splashdown, which was 5 times 5 years after the earthquake, exactly, marked, May 2nd, 2021 marked the beginning of the final 42 months, which is also 1,260 days in the Bible prophecies, before Christ's second coming and his kingdom on earth. I should say his kingdom. And that's again why the connection to the earthquake in the King County in the kingdom. All right? Because it connects to the end of the Antichrist kingdom and the beginning of the kingdom of Christ at his second coming. And home run balls that are hit high and then fall back to earth are symbolic of fallen angels, which is why, again, the back-to-back home runs were hit in Los Angeles. And this home runs symbolizing fallen angels is especially true when it's in Los Angeles, as I just mentioned. And that happened again on September 14th, 1990, exactly 1,763 weeks before King James and the Los Angeles Lakers selected his son with the 55th overall pick. 1,763 is the 508th semi-prime number, and this hints at the 5th and 8th kings in prophecy in Revelation. And in this prophecy, a secondary sub-level of fulfillment of this prophecy is Barack Obama as the 8th king. But the primary, the prophecy is really, the first level of it is that the 7th king is Pope Francis, who will announce on July 27th, 2024, at the beginning of the 5th trumpet, that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world, thus giving him instantly power over the governments of the world. It was announced on August 25th, 2023, that Bronny James had suffered a cardiac arrest when he collapsed onto the basketball court 32 days earlier. The 32nd prime number is 131. So he collapsed, I believe it was on July 23rd. I could be wrong, but anyway, it was 32 days before it. But the 32nd prime number, before the announcement that the reason why he collapsed, because it was not mentioned officially until 32 days later. But the number 32 is the 32nd prime number is 131. And that's why God uses the number 32 in his signs, which, by the way, is equal to the name Obama in simple English gematria. All right, and it's also 4 times 8, and Obama will be the 48th president. But also, the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by this, because the 32nd prime number is 131, And the 131st word in the Greek Concordance of Strong's is the word blood disease, which is what a person gets after they have taken the mark of the Antichrist. Okay? August 25th, 2023 was exactly 44 weeks before it was announced that Bronny James would play with his father, King James, in Los Angeles for the Lakers. By the way, the Lakers are originally from the 32nd state, Minnesota, the land of lakes, which is why the name Lakers. They ended up moving to Los Angeles. The 44th president, Antichrist, who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist, will be thrown into the lake of fire. I should say the 44th president, Antichrist, who is the basketball president. All right? Bronny James collapsed onto the basketball court exactly 29 weeks. Okay, now 29 hints at 9/11. If God were to symbolize 9/11 with two numbers, it would be 2 and 9, because 2 is 1 plus 1. And so Bronny James collapsed onto the court exactly 29 weeks, which hints at Revelation 9:11 and King Abaddon, because Revelation 9:11 is the symbolic verse of Revelation chapter 9 about the fifth trumpet and the fallen angels, who are led by King Abaddon, the king of destruction. All right, so that's why the 29 weeks exactly after Damar Hamlin, the football player, collapsed onto the football field in Cincinnati while playing the Cincinnati Bengals in front of a national TV audience. All right, now the Bengals, and in Cincinnati, because this hints at Rome. The city Cincinnati is named after the Society of Cincinnatus, which George Washington was a member of, and that is named after the Roman general Cincinnatus. And Cincinnati also has another connection to Rome, because in the Garden of Eden, which is a park, the name of a park in Cincinnati, there is a statue that is the symbolic statue of Rome. It's the Capitoline or the Capitoline statue. I believe I'm saying it correct, but I could be wrong. But it's the statue of the wolf that's breastfeeding a couple of baby wolves underneath it. I don't know the symbolic meaning of that, but that is the statue that symbolizes Rome. And it was donated to Cincinnati from Mussolini during his 10th year of his dictatorship. And that's why on the statue is an X. It's the Roman numeral for the number 10. But in God's signs, the letter X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which will be used to persecute Christians. And in ancient Rome, Christians were persecuted in the Colosseum. And they were persecuted with tigers and lions. Bengals are the biggest breed or species of tigers. And the Colosseum is symbolized by a football stadium. All right, and so that's why Damar Hamlin collapsed during a nationally televised Monday Night Football game while playing the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, and went to the hospital in Cincinnati, etc. And we all know why he collapsed. And he wanted to say so in an interview, but held his tongue, because you're not allowed to talk about the truth in today's totalitarian society, just like you weren't able to talk about the truth during the Mussolini totalitarian period. And a totalitarian dictatorship is different than classical dictatorships, where in a classical dictatorship, the strongman rules through fear. In a totalitarian regime, 30% of the population are hypnotized. They are hypnotized by the leader, and there is a cult going on in which they enforce their ideology, and no one is allowed to talk about anything that contradicts it. Otherwise, they are in massive trouble. Not only will they be censored, but they will be killed. Ultimately, that's what's going to happen very soon in America because of the cult of today's political left. The new totalitarian regime that is emerging that will soon have its leader, the Antichrist. And this cult will persecute God's people through the mark of, well, it already has been persecuting God's people through the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or false form of religious worship, or supposedly a new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why most quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is that it is judgment for this particular doctrine, dispensationalism, which is the package that free grace and Calvinism comes in, which is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, which Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. And Calvinism and free grace lead to once saved, always saved. In case you don't know what Calvinism and free grace is. It's, in other words, evangelical culture. There will be those that say, well, I don't need to know about doctrine, I just love Jesus. Well, first of all, our love for the Lord is deepened with the deeper our knowledge is. But also, if you don't know doctrine, you probably do have this doctrine, which Jesus hates, because you aren't educating yourself on how the majority have the wrong doctrine, the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, which the Lord has overwhelmingly confirmed to be what I have just said. And the prediction in this video, the purpose of it is to prove this. Believe me, I know far better than you the reason for this prediction that is from God. It is to prove the things that I have said, the controversial things, which one, the beginning of the 1,260 days, which ends on October 12th, 2024, on the day of the second coming, the Day of Atonement. That's a fact. And it will be proven when the prediction comes to pass. And this is the purpose of the prediction, to prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that is only being explained on this channel. And this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections confirms these things. It is the purpose of the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is to communicate this knowledge. And I know the reason for this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And the other thing that it is confirming is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day and the identity of the mark of the Antichrist. Obviously, it also confirms the identity of the Antichrist, but this should be known from Bible prophecy a long time ago. The second of the two Antichrists is Pope Francis, and it has been known for 2,000 years that the first of the two Antichrists will be a pope, Pope Francis. Anyway, so what I was saying, and by the way, the commonly held objections that people have regarding how this couldn't be the mark of the Antichrist, although it's not necessary because the prediction will prove that you are incorrect, but the objections are answered at the end of the must-watch snake bite video on this channel. All right, now back to what I was saying here. I was talking about how the day that the father-son of the Griffeys, the day that they hit the back-to-back home runs, the father wearing number 30, symbolic of king. That day was exactly 1,763 weeks before the sign involving the son of LeBron James, Bronny James, being selected 55th overall in the draft, okay? Again, 1,763 is the 508th semi-prime number, and this hints at the 5th and 8th kings in the prophecy and Revelation. Okay, so now, I already talked, sorry, I was already down in this paragraph, sorry. I was talking about Damar Hamlin, that's right. Okay, now he, as I was saying, the reason why he collapsed in Cincinnati, I explained that. All right, now, Damar Hamlin wears number 3, and Bronny James wears number 6, which hints at 36, which is the number God uses to hint at 666, the number of the Antichrist, because it hints at 3 6s, but also 6 times 6, and also the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Now, Bronny James wears number 6, which hints at 2 times 3, which hints at 23, the number that his father wears. And this sign occurred 4 plus 4 days before the predicted death of King James Earl Jones. And that's a pairing of 23 and 44, which I believed I mentioned earlier as being what God uses to confirm the signs and connections. So that's another confirmation, by the way. Now, Bronny James is equal to 136 in simple English gematria. 136 is the 4 times 4th, in other words, 16th, triangular number. Okay, and this too confirms the 4 plus 4 days. But this also confirms the exact 44 weeks between the announcement of his cardiac arrest and the announcement that he will play with King James for the Los Angeles Lakers, which in turn is 4 plus 4 days to the date it is predicted that King James, James Earl Jones, who is King Symbolism, will die. 30 years is symbolic of a king. This King James sign is 30 days before the Revelation 9:11 day and King Abaddon day. This will be the day of a symbolic beginning of the demonic possession of the masses. Something will happen that will symbolize this. I don't know what it will be. I'm not saying that everyone is going to become demonically possessed on the state. I'm saying this is the beginning of something. Probably Pope Francis saying that aliens have arrived and have made him the world ambassador. But somehow it will be the beginning of the Antichrist beast system. Okay? And the 5th trumpet. Demons crossing over into the earthly realm. Anyway, this demonic possession will be induced by 5G frequencies in the brain. Bronny James was selected 55th after averaging 5 points in 5 times 5 games for the Trojans. Bronny James played for the Trojans. The things, the mark of the Antichrist are the Trojan horse, as is Joe Biden and the basketball president, a Trojan horse. On this same day was the Trump-Biden debate. Okay, so on the day of this prophetic sign involving LeBron James' son, 55th after averaging 5 points over 5 times 5 games, was the Trump-Biden debate. And Biden is a Trojan horse. He is a puppet for Satan. It's quite obvious. Just for example, when he was campaigning, he had on his podium the number you could text to donate money to his campaign. It was 30303. 30303. And above it was the number 2020, because he was campaigning for 2020 president. Well, 2020 divided by 30303 is 666. All right, anyway, let's move on. That's just something to just throw out there. But just if someone who is wise and discerning can tell from a myriad of things that he has done and said that he is actually possessed in some way, I don't mean that he's not fully himself anymore, but he is definitely spirit of Antichrist. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so in the debate, the highlight was the moment when Biden had a bad stumble in his speaking, to which Trump said he could not understand Biden's last sentence, and he didn't think Biden understood it either. This moment, the highlight of the debate, the big moment, occurred at 9:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It clearly demonstrated that Biden has dementia, which was designed by God so that he would ultimately step down and make his old pal Barack Obama the president again. And I knew this even before the referendum in 2020. I knew that God was made Biden the nominee for this purpose, for him to step down. Even before he picked his running mate, it was obvious that this would be the way that Obama would become the president again. It is through Biden being as old as he is. Because even back then, he was showing signs of dementia and was making all kinds of gaffes, which is why his handlers barely let him out of his room during the campaign. All right? And why did they do that? Because they want Biden. They don't want anyone else. They want Biden. Why do they want Biden? Because he's Barack Obama. Because he's of Barack Obama. He was his vice president. It's because the DEEP people, the DEEP state, the second government, the permanent government class, want to remain in their jobs and in power, and they're all Obama appointees. So best to have a Democrat, but even better to have someone that basically is a puppet for Obama. The Marxist, who has appointed all kinds of Marxists in his regime. Okay? That's a fact, not hyperbole. All right, regarding them being Marxists. All right, now, so anyway, the big moment regarding Biden was his gaffe, or rather his stumbling at 9:11 p.m., and it clearly pointed to his dementia, and dementia hints at demons. The word dementia hints at demons, and what I am saying here is that the demons are going to be taking control of people's brains after the things that are inside the people are activated with the 5G frequencies. That's the whole setup. That's why they took the mark of the Antichrist. It is so that their brains can be taken control of by demons. This dementia incident involving Biden's brain was a prophetic sign that is pointing to the coming demonic possession of people, especially on the left, through demons taking control of their brains, making them, in a way, zombies, which is why the Lord is using zombie symbolism in his signs to point to this too. And what do zombies crave? Brains. They crave eating brains. It's because the demons are going to be possessing people through people's brains, and the vibrations that will be induced with the 5G frequencies. The prophetic moment of the debate with trumpet, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs, was at 9:11 p.m. This was exactly 4 times 400 days, which is also 4 years, 4 months, and 4 times 4 days, after Trump-et's Oval Office speech on the CVD disease on March 11th, 2020, that ended precisely at 9:11 p.m., which was exactly 222 months after 9/11. The number 22 in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in Ezekiel in the Bible, and it would have been a Tav mark. The Tav letter is the last and 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last and 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, on 9/11, God pointed to George Washington, which is explained in other videos, and George Washington was born on the date 222. Because at the founding of the nation, after his first inauguration, he went into Trinity Chapel at Ground Zero, the only building to have survived the falling debris without any damage at all to the building, and that's why today the Trinity Chapel is nicknamed the Miracle Chapel. In this chapel, Washington consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its divine protection and blessings, which it did temporarily on 9/11 in 2001, which is why 222 months later was the CVD day, when Trump's Oval Office speech, I should say Trump-et's Oval Office speech, as in trumpeting the CVD disease, ended precisely at 9:11 p.m., 4 years and 4 days times 4 times 4 days, 4 years, 4 months, and 4 times 4 days, which is also the equivalent of 4 times 400 days before the big moment in the Trump-et debate, in which the Trojan horse made a gaffe at 9:11 p.m., because he is about to step down, making way for the Antichrist, the 44th president. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.